Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Boroughs and Burbs. I'm your host, John Engel, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Roberto Cabrera in Manhattan.
Coming world headquarters on the Upper West Side of New York City. Every Thursday, we bring you insightful conversations about the national real estate landscape, exploring the boroughs, the burbs, and any place really that could be of interest to New Yorkers. And Paris, this week, Paris certainly fits the bill. I love Paris. It's a nice place to visit. Would I want to live there? I guess we're going to find that out this week. I've got two incredible guests, experts on the Paris market lined up. Allison Ashby, she's managing director of Junot Fine Properties, a Knight Frank affiliate. And we've got Roddy Aris from Knight Frank. He's a partner at Knight Frank in charge of the Paris region, including the French Alps. Not part of the Paris region. In addition, he also gets the Alps. We've got both of them ready to share their expertise and insights. But before we dive into our discussion, I just wanted to remind you of two important calls to action. First, I want you to visit our sponsor, gracefarms.org website, gracefarms.org, for more information on the Design for Freedom initiative to end forced labor in the building material supply chain. Support the initiative with the purchase of Grace Farms teas and coffees. Second, if you love everything about real estate like we do, well, luxury real estate, Boroughs and Burbs needs you to like, share, and review this podcast. If you enjoy the show, help spread the word. And with no further ado, let me turn over the mic to Allison Ashby, Managing Director, Junot Fine Properties. Tell us about Junot Fine Properties and your role at Knight Frank.
So in Junot Fine Properties, we are one of 19 offices in Paris. We are also the exclusive partner for the Knight Frank Global Network for residential in Paris. I manage a team of fully bilingual, multilingual agents, and we concentrate on the exceptional properties in Paris and services for non-residents. We like to follow our buyers like buyers agents in Paris, take them from A to Z. I like to say the idea of, hey, let's buy a place in Paris until you throw your first dinner party.
So you have listing agents and you have buyers agents.
Yes.
And is the business 50-50 or?
It is about 50-50. Yes, the important in Paris, it's important to control listings. And what's interesting about the Paris market is that we do not have an MLS, and they're not necessarily exclusive listings. So
it's who you know.
It's who you know, and trying to insist on an exclusive relationship, even if the market doesn't necessarily work that way. And build the contact before the client arrives in Paris and get that exclusive listing. And we're in the same business, but it's a lot more opaque in the Paris market than in the US.
Is there pressure to create a centralized system of any sort?
There is pressure. There's also a culture that resists it quite heavily. I've been in this market for 12 years. And when I first arrived, you can hear my accent, I am American. I didn't understand why the addresses are not placed on the advertisements, because they're not exclusive often. So you don't know necessarily where a property is located because the listing agent doesn't want to put the address because they're afraid they're going to lose their listing if it's not an exclusive. So it is very, very difficult to understand what is on the market. There can be properties that are listed with 3 or 4 different agencies, sometimes not even at the same price. And the agency is taking lower commission, so then they'll put it online at a lower amount. It's a bit the Wild West. So,
wow, so it's extremely important to have someone who's experienced, who can understand and kind of like tick through all the noise.
Wow,
that's there.
We could spend a whole hour on the difference between your market and ours. But before we do, I want to turn it over to Roddy. And Roddy, introduce us. What does it mean to be partner in charge of the Paris region and the French Alps?
Oh, well, it's a pleasure. First of all, thanks very much, John and Roberto, for having me on the call. So taking a step back, maybe I can introduce Knight Frank. So we're a partnership. We have almost 500 offices across the globe in 53 territories, employing 20,000 people. Bringing it back into France, we have 30 offices across France. So these are partners that we work with across France, and Alison Ashby of Juno Fine Property is our exclusive partner in Paris. We're 128 years old, and I've been at the firm now. This is my 10th year looking after the Paris region.
You don't look a day over 120, Roddy.
I know. They work us hard here. And we've been working now with Alison, I think, for about 5 years, and it's a fantastic relationship. My role is to manage the relationships with our partners across France, and in this instance, it's Alison. So we will bring them buyers through our friends in America or from the Far East, and find out what it is that they want, and try and hand them, fully wrapped with a bow over to Alison to look after and convert the deal over in Paris.
So the first thing I wanted to do was orient us on what is the Paris market. When we talk about the New York market, we talk about all 5 boroughs and not just Manhattan. So what does Paris include? I know you have this thing called arrondissements. That's a fancy word for neighborhood. And I can pull up a screen with a picture of all of the Paris arrondissements, but what does that mean? Is this the arrondissements? Is that the Paris market?
It is the Paris market. So we have what you can call the Île-de-France, the Grand Paris, and the large Paris, or you see the black ring, which is our périphérique. That's the highway that surrounds Paris. And within that highway, you have the 20 districts, and as a snail shape. It's you have to see you're going from the inside to the out. Now that we're looking at the map, and Neuilly, which is a neighborhood in the west of Paris, is often considered a very close association with Paris, up in the north exactly. And then further south, on the other side of the Bois de Boulogne, south from there, is Boulogne-Billancourt. And so those 2 neighborhoods are often grouped in with the Paris market. But largely what protects our market is that, first of all, it's a UNESCO protected city, and there are little to almost no new development properties. So the Haussmann era where all of in the late 19th century the city was redesigned. That footprint remains what we have to work with, and our buildings are also very much from that time period. We would love to have the new build that you have in New York and that London also has, but it's just it does not exist in Paris.
Is it so? My information is taken from the 1980s, where the really fancy neighborhoods had low numbers, the first, second, third, fourth arrondissement, the ones next to the river, real close to Notre Dame. And something like the Bois de Boulogne back in the 80s, when I was in college, was kind of a sketchy place. Is that all still true, or are those norms, those conventions being broken down?
It's a little less true. I mean, certainly from our clients are most interested in the 1st to the 8th arrondissement and the 16th, especially the north of the 16th. Those are what we would call the prime neighborhoods of Paris.
So 1 to 8 and 16. Okay. Passy. And the Bois de Boulogne, not so sketchy anymore. I mean, in the 80s, Central Park in New York was kind of sketchy, and they cleaned that up. So have you cleaned up the Bois de Boulogne and it's sort of elegant?
It depends where, but yes, certainly if you're in Neuilly on that side of the Bois de Boulogne, there's also the Louis Vuitton Foundation, Frank Gehry building that was created in the middle of the Bois de Boulogne. It is not the same. It's very similar to Central Park, not the same story as in the 80s.
So your housing stock as a whole is fairly fixed It has not changed. It's not growing by any means. And your
Exactly.
population, how about your population
Roberta,
growth? How has
they
it
have
grown?
rules that you can't build super skinny
No, I
skyscrapers.
know.
Like, so tell us
No.
about these rules.
Oh, we are extremely limited, and the prime new build, new development properties, we have one that comes around every 5 years. So they certainly, you can ask a premium, but the stats that I've seen are above 1 million, there are about 3,000 sales a year, above 2,500,000 sales a year, and above 10,050,000 sales a year.
Wow. That's not a tremendous amount of volume. So,
No.
but without having a centralized system, do you have reliable metrics on what your overall inventory is? Like I know that we watch our, and there's a handful of different people and it ranges, but it's all within a range and it's pretty accurate of what's our inventory, how many deals have been done, what's closed, what the closing prices are, which of course are lagging. But without that centralization, how do you know what's happening in your marketplace?
Until there's a sale transacted, the stats are not clear. But luckily, we do have this notaire system. So the equivalent to a French lawyer is the notary in France, and all transactions go through it's an appointee of the state, and they handle the title transaction. So there is a record of that sale, and so acted sales are closely tracked. When you sell the shares of a company, that is not as closely tracked. So there are some things that can go below the radar, but what is actually on the market is not easy to get a grasp on.
So when you say 3,000 sales at the 1 million, 500 sales at the 5 million, and 50 sales at the 10 million. Can you
500 at 2 million plus?
Oh, at 2 million plus. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Can you break that down further? In the New York market, we think of co-ops, condos, and single family / townhouse.
Hmm.
What is the breakdown in the Paris market?
We do not have co-ops. So that's easy to answer. But the breakdown between apartments and houses, I don't have that figure off the top of my head, but the single family, the townhouses are quite limited, especially in the less than 5 million market. And I would say in the 10 million plus market, the 50 sales per year that are 10 million plus, it's probably about 2/3. That might be half. Might be 10 million plus, probably half townhouses and apartments.
No co-op boards. No. Do the condo boards act like co-op boards? Come on, no. I can imagine that they've got something to say in Paris about who's moving in.
No, that's after you move in, maybe, but they can't control who purchases the building.
Okay.
Here in New York, of our housing stock, first of all, 70% of our housing stock is rental property, which is extraordinary. And of that 30%, 60% of our marketplace in Manhattan is co-ops. Wow. Which is like unheard of in other cities. So you guys don't have that at all, which is great.
Yeah.
So can we talk about if I were a buyer and I'm coming there and I have a $3 million budget and I want to come buy something, what sort of down payments are expected? What sort of financing can you get? What sort of interest rates are you seeing right now?
Our interest rates are high for us, but low in comparison to what you're seeing in the U.S. We have passed the 4% mark, sitting between 4 and 4.5 at the moment, and that is a high that we haven't seen in the past 10 years. If you would have asked me that question 2 years ago, we would have been around 2%. So we are trying to stomach that change at the moment. The market is reflecting a double interest rate hike than what we've seen in recent years. But in general, compared to an American coming in looking at the Paris market, there isn't the same kind of sticker shock as far as the
Are
interest
you
rate.
finding a tremendous international interest, Rada, you as well, by people who are tired of 8% in New York and looking at Paris and looking at the 4% rates and saying, oh, this is a great investment opportunity. I can finance it, I can leverage it at 4%, and I can rent it, or I can look at the capital appreciation. This is a really good safe harbor. This is a really good conservative investment.
Well, I think as Alison implied, we're coming from really rock bottom. We had the luxury of being around the 2%. So 4% actually is not that attractive. 4 to 4.5% is not really
to the French, but for the rest of the world.
For the rest of the world, yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah, and then you got the dollar play, of course, with the Americans coming in. But I think where Paris has really begun to shine is in a post-Brexit environment. So London has traditionally been up there with New York as one of the destinations for global power players. These are people that invest in assets around the world. Where you're going to look? You're going to look in London. You're going to look in New York. London, it's taken a beating, and the spotlight has turned onto Paris. So in that respect, yeah, very much so. The Middle Eastern, the Far East, the US, the North and South America buyers that would previously have gone to London, I think have gone to Paris and have had a fantastic impact. I mean, Macron has rolled out the red carpet for them.
Can we go back to interest rates just from a relative perspective? Because now they're 4 and they seem high to you because you were at 2. Prior to the 2 era, where were interest rates in the early 2000s? Were they at 3 or 4%? Were they like here? They were 6% ish in that range.
And we're returning to that, or hoping to.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm going to throw you under the bus on that.
You are, and you're going to put me on the spot because it's before my time in Paris, so I don't. I actually don't have that knowledge at my fingertips. But I don't know if it's ever been at 8. No, and I know in the highest in the States it was even at like 15 back in the
early 80s. Yeah, it's crazy. It's like 17%.
So outrageous. Yeah.
But so
the scale is more compact.
What sort of terms? Like here, you get a 30-year mortgage. Can you? We were learning in Australia, you get a mortgage for 3 years. Like their whole market is going to reset. Like New York could actually kind of use that because everybody's holding on to their interest rates. But if they had to reset right now, and it would create so much more activity because people would be giving up. No one wants to give up their 2.8% mortgage for 7 or 8%. No one.
We do have fixed rates here. It's not like in the UK where it's often variable. So the rates are fixed and they go anywhere. They can go up to 25-year fixed rate. So often it's between 15 and 25 years fixed rate. The interesting thing to know about financing in France is first of all, US persons with the FATCA transparency ruling, international banks don't necessarily like to work with Americans. You have to report all international accounts to when you pay your taxes in the States. So there are some banks that categorically do not work with US persons. Another thing to know is that financing in France is based on your ability to repay, and that is very much linked with your earning power and your age. So if you're too old, it's hard to get a mortgage in France, to the point where you have to go through a medical exam.
You better come with your suitcase full of cash.
Well, and that's what people will do. I mean, Paris tends to be a placement of, the market is so solid that there's very little risk, especially in the prime market. So if you're coming, it's mostly for lifestyle reasons and safe haven investment. And the reason why some of our clients do end up taking financing is mostly to do with, we have a wealth tax that's payable on the equity that you have in a property. So to mitigate the exposure to this annual wealth tax, they will place their assets at a local bank who will lend you back your money, and in order to reduce that annual fee.
We did a show, Saint-Tropez, and they said to us, come on, we'll find you a bank. We'll find you a bank. We'll finance the whole thing at below 5% rates. So assuming that I can finance it, and the most interesting thing they said was, we said, who's buying, who's selling? And they said the Russians are selling, the French are buying, and the Americans wait until after the next election. Every 4 years, the Americans kind of wake up, and half of them don't like what just happened, and they all move to France. And I thought, son of a gun, is that happening now? Are you experiencing, where are we in the wave, in the cycle? Who's buying, who's selling in Paris?
Well, we've got an Emily in Paris scenario going on. It was the perfect storm last year with currency, interest rates, everything. But really, it's a post-COVID lifestyle. A bit of a, I wouldn't say Emily in Paris, she's about 25 years too young. Most of our clients are pre-retirement, if I could very generalize, who have always wanted to spend more time in Paris, and they know that owning a home is the best way to make sure that they actually get to do that.
People like Roberto and me, once the kids are out of the house, or they come with their kids.
Often the kids are still in their studies, but yeah, young kids not so common. Usually kind of get high school, college age, and they know that there will be the family that will come and go and take advantage of the apartment at various times in the year. They're not necessarily going to rent it out. They'll let friends use it, but it is let's not wait till retirement to enjoy life, and let's learn from this pandemic era and finally take the move. But you're right that politically there has been, of course, everybody looks towards Europe and would like a foot in Europe.
I want a foot in Europe. I heard yesterday, and this is Roberto's expertise, not mine, but in the New York market, where you have 3,500 condos right now available, 3,500 co-ops, and about 400 townhouses for sale, they said there's an unusually large number of pied-à-terres, studios and one-bedrooms, more inventory than normal. Now, Roberto might say I'm wrong, but that's my impression. And when I asked why that might be, they said, as a result of COVID, people have taken an interest in more space. They also, I think, in New York, have the opportunity, because the market is just still in recovery mode. And so prices have not been at record highs. Is this right, Roberto? And so people are taking the opportunity to trade up into 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom and more space. They want more space. They certainly want a Zoom room or extra space if they can get it after COVID. Are you seeing some of these same trends in the Paris market? You have extra inventory of pied-à-terres and not so much of the 3-bedroom variety?
Well, there's a shortage of housing. So really what we're seeing more is this flight to quality of people wanting penthouses, outdoor space, sweeping views, monument views, that our clients are paying a premium in order to have those lifestyle elements, for sure.
I think we can go one further, and if you bring back your map, John, I don't know if you got your map of your arrondissement.
Yes.
So you'll see your 20 arrondissement there. Now you gotta remember, this is the capital city of France, right? This is where everybody, not just you, me, and Alison, want to foot in there, but a whole lot of the world wants to foot in there. That around that black ring, that's the ring road. So you got this noose around there that stops it from expanding. So the people are growing, people are coming in, the pressure on the city is building. They're not building any more stock. They're not building any more high rises because they're not allowed to. So what's happening is that these slightly edgier areas, your 18, 19, 20 arrondissement of Paris, which 10 years ago, maybe you would look and say, okay, I'm not going to go in there. These are all gentrifying. And it's the market is becoming more uniform, and then the pressure on the prices, of course, in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 arrondissement is just going through the roof because, for obvious reasons, these are the prime districts of Paris. But the more outer suburbs are gentrifying, and we're having at the moment, Paris is having a rebirth with something called the Grand Paris. So the Grand Paris is an infrastructure project which is addressing this ring around this neck. It's encouraging people to get out of there, to get out of those 20 arrondissements and leave Paris and go a little bit further out. So the likes of Neuilly-sur-Seine, Levallois, Clichy, Puteaux, all those areas to the west, just to relieve the pressure. And this infrastructure is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Alison, but I've got a feeling it's something like 100 train stations or 150 new train stations with any number of new train lines. And all of that, again, is attracting, it's getting people out of Paris, but it's also attracting inward investment in Paris because they can see that it's somewhere that's moving and shaking and growing and blossoming.
Can I take it? Can I buy, Vincennes? Can I buy a single family house with a yard in Vincennes, or that's still further out?
Certainly.
I mean, would you want to go to Vincennes? That's a different story. I think you
Oh, there's some nice houses in Vincennes.
Yeah.
There's the zoo out there. It's quite lovely. It's the other Bois de Boulogne.
Yeah, but
It's just not the west.
I think you can find a house there with a garden, can't you? But
It's
in
living-
London terms, but just to give you guys a sense, I don't know New York, but I know London because I live and work here. So those 20 arrondissements is probably the equivalent of zones 1 and 2 within London.
Vincennes, I think, is the analogy the Bronx. Once you leave Manhattan and all the famous monuments, Rockefeller Center and Central Park, and you get out to the outer boroughs, say the Bronx, you have the least expensive real estate. And yet in the Bronx, there's very little, what I'd say, green space. You have to get an hour outside of the city of downtown to Greenwich in Connecticut, or out on Long Island, or out on in New Jersey, in order to get green space, half-acre zone, 1-acre zone. And so you see people are willing to commute 1 hour into the city, and that's my market, the 1 hour commute from green space. And what you're saying is nowhere on this map are there single family homes with a half an acre and green space. I have to go further out. I have to go
no, not at all. No, there. If you bring back your map, there are certainly areas.
It goes.
I was thinking that I have to get out to Giverny way out west.
No. So all that area, Neuilly, Issy-les-Moulineaux, so down south, these areas as well. There you can find a family house, and if you're on a moped, from there to Place de la Concorde, you'll be there in 15 minutes.
Even an electric bike, you can go along the Seine. From that loop in the Seine on the southwest corner is Meudon, and there's a forest in Meudon. You take the path on the Seine, and you're in the center in 20 minutes.
So has that been the trend? In the center of Paris, you said prices are skyrocket. People are now starting to get more space in the 20th, right? Or in the 16th. But if I want more space still, I can go outside the ring.
Yeah.
And I can get a single family home. Is that the trend since COVID? Are people
It's a
wanting
big lifestyle change. It is you're going from being a Parisian to living in the suburbs. And to make that move, often people have said, well, if I'm going to sit on the train for 30 minutes, I'd rather sit on the train for an hour and be really in the countryside. There was, because of a COVID effect, as you had in the city, a search for green space. And I wouldn't call it a mass exodus, because much of the industries are still very strong in Paris. And if you want to have the same career opportunities, you can't often find those in Lyon and Nantes and Toulouse. You can, but it's you're not going to have as many opportunities.
Are any of those areas outside of the ring burgeoning as like, actually, it's pretty nice there? There's a lot of new houses being built. It's becoming a really good neighborhood, like to the northeast or to the southwest. Or is there any particular region that's kind of breaking out of the pack a little bit?
Well, it's the west of Paris. We have offices towards Versailles. You get Saint-Germain-en-Laye and Le Vésinet. These neighborhoods, there are many international schools, British and American schools that are out in these western suburbs, and they are accessible on the RER train, which is the same train you take from Charles de Gaulle when you arrive in Paris. That's the RER-B. The other one's the RER-A. It's a commute, but you can find good schools and green space. So we often have clients that are used to that lifestyle of commuting in their past cities, and they're open to looking in those western suburbs.
So are any of the, you think about, Paris is like a Target. The dead center is the most expensive, and as you get out, it gets more and more affordable, right? And then you get outside, and it gets more and more affordable. Are any of the people who are moving outside of that ring people that are actually quite affluent, and they're just building big places, not just trying to get, listen, I have 3 kids and I need space, I need a yard, so I need to go outside to get enough space to get a house, and I can pay X amount. Whereas someone who's going outside of the city a little bit, saying, look, here's 3 acres and I'm going to put a $15 million house here because that's what I want. Is that happening at all?
There's not so much new build. What you do is you renovate. You'll find a home that whether it was built in the 90s or whether it was built 150 years ago, there is less of a tendency for new build for the affluent. You would go farther afield and renovate.
Yeah,
A
just
castle?
that. I think people with that kind of money, the money you're talking about, Roberto, is they will have a very nice apartment in central Paris, probably in the 16th or in the 7th arrondissement, and their place in the country is not going to be just there. It's going to be a hunting estate in the Sologne. It's going to be maybe in the southwest, in the Basque region. That's where the money goes. That's where the affluent of Paris, when they leave, they go to those areas.
And
But
what sort of community is it?
Right, second homes. Nobody makes their primary home in out in the country anymore.
Yeah. That's
so
right.
How far are those places, like to go to the Basque region and to go to like where you're talking about? What sort of commute is that?
I mean, we have I don't know what the train system's like in the US, but in France it is amazing. You can travel right the way across the country and be Saint-Jean-de-Luz or Bordeaux in well, maybe not Saint-Jean-de-Luz, but certainly Bordeaux in 2 hours, Alison?
2 hours, exactly.
Yeah, and likewise Marseille. There's a train down to Marseille, and again you're about 2.5, 3 hours.
Exactly.
So let's talk about that. So in New York, it was always a luxury to have a second place somewhere. You go, you have a house in the Hamptons, you have a house upstate, or whatever the case may be. When COVID happened, everybody left. Yeah. Everybody left, but it wasn't necessarily that they sold their place in New York. Some sold and left, and they went, listen, I need to go move to, outside of the city, somewhere that's more affordable, something that's not so dense. But a lot of what happened is that people, they either went to their second place or they added another place. They never sold their apartment in New York. And then it became a situation where it wasn't your second home. It was really co-primary residence. You're kind of living half and half. Has that happened there?
Well, 100%. So one of the other areas I look after for Knight Frank is the French ski resorts. So you would have heard of Courchevel, You might have heard of Maribel, Chamonix, Megève. These are all the prime ski resorts. So at a time during COVID where we had a relatively healthy inventory of stock, COVID hit, and I remember it very clearly. You know, the mayors basically said to the residents and all the tour operators, you have 3 days to shut shop and get out of here. We're closing down the resort. So it was kind of scary because we thought, well, this is maybe the end of skiing. Maybe this is the end of the Alpine industry as we know it. And actually, what happened was the complete reverse. Those properties that were on the market were taken off the market. People held on to them for dear life, and the demand just went absolutely through the roof. So suddenly, you know, where we were going on a gentle curve up, you know, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6% per annum, suddenly was jumping up to 10 to 15% per annum because of the demand for those areas. And they were being used, much as you say, yeah, this is Chamonix, right?
Yes.
As co-primary residences. And interesting, actually, because, you know, nowadays when we work a lot with developers, they ask us, what do people want? And what they want is a home from home. So you've got to have the same level of comforts that you would expect in your apartment in Paris or in New York. You want that in your place in the country.
Can you give me a sense of how much what I'm looking at Chamonix photos? What does this cost? If I want to buy in Chamonix.
Do you work in square meters over there?
Square feet.
Square feet.
Okay,
We'll just divide by 9.
I'll tell you the square meter price.
Okay.
So we are trading at the moment at 15,000, let's say 13 to 16,000 euros a square meter.
So about 1,500 per square foot.
And for something exceptional, maybe 20 to 25,000 euros a square meter. So a nice chalet in the valley, you need to be thinking maybe 5.5, 6 million euros.
Okay. Not so different from our Aspen. Not so different from Park
I think
City.
cheaper than Aspen.
Yes, closer. Yes. Well.
And how's the skiing?
Well, good question. So for me, we're often asked about people. Wow. You have your powder junkies, those that are all about skiing, and then you have those that want the year-round appeal. You know, the flower meadows and all the summer sports. This is a resort that does both because you're mid-altitude, you're in the tree line. And so you have all the benefits of the summer, but you're not so high that you're in the rocks and it's all exposed, so you don't get the benefits of the summer action. It's got the best off-piste skiing in the world. That's what it's famous for. There's somewhere called Les Grands Montées, which is a cable car that takes you to the very top, and then the whole thing is off-piste. It's where people come.
And how far is this from Paris?
Oh, this is the Alps. So this is you're closer to Geneva than you are to Paris. But if you were to go from there to Paris, by plane it's an hour, or maybe a little bit less, maybe 45 minutes, and by train maybe an hour and a half to Geneva.
Driving? How long?
Driving is a drive, so you're probably about 4 hours.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what? I think that for a New Yorker, Roberto goes to the Hamptons. Is that a 2 to 3 hour drive to the Hamptons for a New Yorker?
It's 91 miles that on a Sunday morning takes an hour and 40 minutes. And on a Friday afternoon, if you time it wrong, it could take 4 hours and 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So,
and same thing with maybe Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard. That's more of a 4 hour commitment, right? For a New Yorker?
Yeah, for sure. But it's manageable if that's what you want to do, if that's what's important to you. So how nice is it when I was in Versailles 2 years ago, absolutely beautiful. How is the housing like on the way out there? Is that a popular place? Is it affluent?
Very much so. The Versailles is a short train ride, and beautiful period homes with villages around, like I mentioned, Saint-Germain-en-Laye or Les Vézinets, are highly sought after because their accessibility to Paris.
Yeah. Can I ask you about your marketplace as to where you are now as opposed to where you were in like 2019 from a standpoint of pricing? Are you above 20? Like for us, we're kind of around 2019. If anything, we're actually slightly falling because the interest rates have become such a barrier mentally for people. Whereas really the competition in Manhattan, the competition is really the biggest barrier to entry. When everybody's trying to buy, it's the hardest thing. It's not really the price. It's not the interest rates. It's not any of that. But right now, the interest rates are this big, meatball that someone has thrown on the table that no one can stop looking at. And what they don't realize is they can refinance that, later, and they should really be trying to grasp a nice piece of property at this moment. But there's a lot of standing back. So where our marketplace, our pricing is slightly falling off. But where are you in relation to 2019?
So we're seeing a two-tier market, and the two tiers are properties that are with flaws, that you have to make. You don't check all the boxes. You either got a view you don't want or lacking light. Those properties are suffering. The prices and the volume have gone down about 8% since the beginning of this year. And that is following from 2012 to 2022. There's been an average of about a 6% increase per year, steady. It was only in 2012 that had a bit of a dip, and depending on the neighborhood and the type of asset, it's been a very secure market. And to see the prices leveling off after this 10-year boom, everybody thought that COVID was going to be it. And we all braced ourselves for the market stopping, prices diving, and it wasn't the case.
Wow.
And it's only today with the interest rates that we start to see both prices and volumes beginning of the year start to level off. And I even heard today that there's the average 10,000 euros per square meter, which is a big average. It's taking into our average is 28,000 per square meter. So 2,800 per square foot, thereabouts. They've recorded that the average price has just dropped below that level. But if you take the prime market, it's a very different story. Everybody is that flight to quality, and there aren't enough properties that check all the boxes with the outdoor space and the monument views. So those properties continue to increase in value.
100%.
Are people taking those obsolete buildings in Vincennes and Montparnasse and wherever the Ring, and redeveloping? We're seeing redevelopment like crazy in Brooklyn along the waterfront, and you're now seeing prices in Brooklyn equal that of Manhattan. And in those cases, they've taken an opportunity to take down some of those old Brooklyn factories and redevelop. Are you seeing the same thing in Paris?
Again, we don't have an excess of abandoned buildings due to our lack of real estate. But we are seeing is because of the flex office trends and home office trends, that companies are downsizing their office space, and that the commercial real estate is starting to suffer. And so investors are considering to reanalyze and maybe convert some office to residential.
Yeah, a prime example of which we have, right? We have the iconic Renault garage And you can find it if you type in on your Google search Renault garage, Seine River, Paris, you'll find it. So that I mean, if you go there now, it's covered in oil and tire tracks and car jacks and the rest of it. But that is being converted into prime residential real estate in the 15th district of Paris.
Wait, where is this garage?
There, the top right.
Right here?
Is that the one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. So that's on the banks of the River Seine. So it doesn't look like much, right? But that's what we have to play with. So what they're doing is they're gonna build on top of that. They're gonna extend it. They're gonna elevate it, add another 7 floors, and convert. What you can't see from there is those are actually garages and workshops. But that's a blank canvas for a developer at the moment, and we're selling units in that. And there is very much a trend, because we come back to the whole noose around the neck of Paris, lack of new build, lack of space. You have these buildings which are just sitting dormant, and we're converting them.
Wow, that's great.
But you're not able to raise the buildings and build a new one. You have to take what's there and retrofit it.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, it's going to depend on which parts of Paris you're in. But with regards to this one, I don't think they could for it, because I think this one's actually a listed building, if I'm not mistaken.
There is a part they're adding some floors on the side, and then they're keeping the existing to build within.
From a standpoint of life in Paris, like here, there's been a lot of difficulty in the US with people returning to work, returning to the office. Do you guys have office buildings that are suffering, leases that are empty because people are all working from home?
It's not a mass trend. The values have come down in the office space, but there is it's not as shocking as you see in New York. Because
I was just curious, a lot of people started to look for bigger apartments because they weren't going to the office. They're working from home, so they want that extra room, and that was something that actually created some activity in the marketplace. But it's on the other side, the office market is tremendously suffering, especially the Class A buildings here are doing spectacularly, but all these B and C buildings that are old buildings in the mid blocks of Midtown, they're empty. And there's a big push here about retrofitting them. Can they make them residential properties? But the infrastructure within the way they're built, for the standpoint of having enough light and air and bathrooms, it's virtually impossible. So it's a real quandary.
So what are they going to do with them? What can you do with them?
We'll have to get back to you on that.
Exactly.
We haven't figured that out yet. I think America, we're all on edge, because I just looked at the studies on defaults, and the office building defaults are not as high. So there's been a lot written about changes in habits and less need for office space, but we're only seeing defaults on offices in the 5-6% range. So it is, and historically they've been at 4%. So we've really only seen an uptick about 1 or 2%. Two things I want to get to is before we end, we're going to probably end with your predictions, forward-looking predictions. But before we get there, I want to go back to where we started, which is this bizarre system of no MLS. I will just say no MLS. So if Roberto and I and all our crazy friends have been convinced in the last 45 minutes that we are moving to Paris, and yet I can't do what I normally do, which is go online and check out the inventory and spend 6 months getting educated before I call a realtor. So who's in charge over there, and how do I go about buying something if I'm now inspired?
Oh, you can go online. You're just not sure that when you pick up the phone, if the property you're looking at is actually for sale, and if it's still for sale at that price. And really, you need to be accompanied by a professional. You can waste so much time with misinformation, And that
And the
is really-
professional I choose matters. You're saying if I choose somebody who just started yesterday in the business, I'm at a disadvantage.
I mean,
Or if I choose a firm that's too small without enough connectivity to the other firms with all the listings and what's going on, I'm at a disadvantage. So I could pick the wrong agent or the wrong firm, and it's going to cost me money.
Well, you could waste a lot of time finding an agent that doesn't have access to the right properties. And then, so for this reason, sometimes buyers are in touch with several different agencies, and talk about a waste of time. You know how hard it is to get one agent to understand exactly what you're looking for, and to do that all at a distance, but then to have to be in touch with 2 or 3. So that's the business model behind the team that I've created in Paris. If I can do a little shout out for that, is that we co-op with the other agencies like you would in the States. We have great relationships with all the other luxury brokers, and we know our listings in and out, but our job is to know the high-end market also of our competing companies, colleagues, I guess I would even call it, because as of a certain price point, the agents are starting to learn that you have to work together.
So Allison, if I come there, how do you protect yourself? If I come there and I'm going to work with you, do I sign an exclusive agreement with you to represent me? Because I talk to you and you show me 5 properties, and then, Jill from ABC company shows me 1, and I'm like, this is the one, and you get nothing.
It's tough. I would like to have a signed buyer's agency agreement for every buyer that we work with, but because it's not necessarily done, what we have an equivalent called an apartment finder, a chasseur d'appartement, and that is when you sign a buyer's agreement, and that is when the buyer pays a fee on top of the classic agency fees in order to have a thorough somebody who accompanies them throughout the process. We try to, but that many people are not willing to pay. You're already paying 5%. Why do I need to pay 3% on top of that? And so what we do is we say we will try to touch the buyer side of the agency fees, and if for some reason we're refused and we can't get you into this property, we'll tell you up front, I'd like to show you this property, but I'll need another 2 or 3% on top, because the agency won't split. But in general, there are enough properties that we have access to, and it's rare that it's a problem. We are able to accompany our clients and split 50-50 with the agency who has the listing.
So if I'm a seller and I come to you, I want you to sell my property, I pay you how much commission?
5%. So
and
our
5% goes just to you?
5% goes, so the listing agent signs the 5%, and they split that with the person either within their company or an exterior company that brings the buyer. So quite similar. So 2.5, 2.5.
Yeah. Here we're having a whole thing with the commissions. It's like it's all built into the price, but then now it's,
yeah.
Our old system is being challenged in the courts, and nobody really knows whether we're going to abandon our old system entirely or make some modifications to make things more transparent. But there's a big question of fairness and who pays who going on, and it's working its way through the courts. And it's especially fascinating to Roberto and I to hear about a system where with less transparency, in which, and that's what you're describing in Europe. And on the one hand, I'm jealous of a system that requires buyers to come to me as an agent to find out about properties. That's the way it used to be in America. And now many of my buyers say, well, I want to see this one, this one, and this one, and this one. And they've already looked at them online. I miss the old days where they had to call me up and say, what do you recommend for at the $3 million price point? And it sounds like you have that. On the other hand, when I'm working for my seller, I want to expose his property, her property, to the greatest number of people. And so I understand the value of the internet and internet information to provide a more transparent and wider distribution on behalf of my sellers. So we're wrestling with that today. With that, I guess I should point to the future, the crystal ball, right? If we're talking about crystal ball and all the changes we're wrestling with here in America, give me a crystal ball. I could point to major news events around the world. How are they affecting the Paris market? Most notably, you guys are all gearing up for some Olympics going on in downtown Paris. And I imagine that could be maybe potentially disruptive, maybe positive for your real estate market. What do you see happening to the Paris market going forward, and why?
Well, it's very exciting to have the Olympics. It's certainly we've been hearing about it for years and can't believe that it's here finally. So all focus will be on Paris. How the market will react is to be seen. There will be a mass exodus of Parisians who say, "Oh gosh, I don't want to be here for that," and seasonal rentals certainly for that event. But I think we're going to put our best foot forward for the Summer Olympics. And
are you going to be swimming in the Seine one of these days? I hear you can do that now.
That's the big question. We're not quite sure yet if they're going to make it happen. But certainly with the opening ceremonies on the Seine, kind of open to public throughout the whole city, there are many improvements that are happening. The whole of Paris is under renovations at the moment, and if it can all get done by the summer, it'll be a small miracle. But I think we can only benefit from the spotlight being on Paris for this event.
Roddy, 4.5%, but despite these outrageous 4.5% interest rates, what do you see happening to the real estate market, the luxury market, despite these crazy rates?
Well, whisper it quietly, but the inflation levels are shrinking. Interest rates will come down, and there is positivity on the horizon. So the kind of rough seas that we've had for the last six months, actually for the last 6 months to a year, it's still rough out there. But I think actually if we can just see past this next maybe 3 or 4 months, I think Q2 of next year will be decisive for where the Paris market heads. And I'd like to think that we're gonna continue on the front foot. It is a jewel, come on, it's Paris. There's no other city in the world like it, and it's tiny and everybody wants a piece of it, and now the spotlight is shining on it. We got the Grand Paris, we've had the Rugby World Cup, we've got the Olympics. Why not?
You lost Messi. We got
Uh-huh.
Messi. You lost Messi.
We lost Messi. You can keep Messi, we don't want him.
What's the next wave of foreign buyers from where?
We are seeing a lot of interest from Asia this year.
Yeah, at the top end of the market, at the very top end where the air is thin, Asia. That's where
the air is thin.
Why? Why suddenly from Asia? I would imagine there's nothing.
Well, because there's a lot of money there. That's where the wealth is. If you look at we have we produce a wealth report at Knight Frank, and we can monitor where the money is, who's got the money, and what they're doing with the money. And unfortunately, I don't have the stats to hand, but you could probably find it easy enough. The Knight Frank wealth report, you'll see that the wealth emanating out of Asia is just unfathomable in scale. And we've been talking about it for ages, but we're beginning to feel it now. And see
Are you including India in that?
Yeah, of course. India, China. I mean, Japan, no, because Japan's on its knees with its weak yen. But Singapore, even burgeoning and upcoming countries, Vietnam, all that side of the world is really is coming of age, and they've got money.
Roberto and I are planning a Wealth Report show dedicated to the Wealth Report with Knight Frank. It's already
fantastic.
scheduled, I believe, in March. I hope you'll join us and we can continue this conversation about where the big money is now and where it's moving. That we're very excited. That's going to be a highlight of the spring, our spring season, the
Great.
Wealth Report show.
Well, I look forward to your invite, John.
So we're definitely gonna get you back. We want to know what's going on, how wealth is moving in Paris. I think to respect the fact that Roberto has like 18 showings back to back right after this episode, I think that brings us to the end of another enlightening episode of Boroughs and Burbs. Sorry to say. We want to express our sincere gratitude to our fantastic guests for joining us today and sharing your wisdom about Paris, the Alpine market, and even Versailles. And now I'm very excited about that Renault garage. Save me a spot. If you enjoyed this episode, everybody, please don't forget to share it. Send it to a friend. Go ahead. I'll wait. We've got time. And please review our show on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback is invaluable and helps us continue to improve and bring you the content you want to see. And let's see, I think that's it. Oh, we can't wait to have you back next Thursday. We're going to be in Naples, Florida, the Paris of Florida, Naples, for another captivating episode of Boroughs and Burbs. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys
This
so
was
much.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto.
New,
Thank you,
New
John.
York will welcome you guys here. Come anytime.
Oh, you're too kind. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.